When Siddhartha Gautama paused to reflect, to still his mind, he experienced his true awakened nature. He realized all the movement, including spiritual pursuits, masked his ability to recognize his true nature. So he simply sat and observed, noticing the mind and all its delusions. When he'd had enough, I imagine he laughed and woke up from the mind and numbing effects of ego grasping. He then touched the earth, the ground of his awareness, and she spoke, a kind acknowledgement of his awakening. We walk upon a planet that teaches us everything we need to know. She is always inviting us, calling us to remember our interconnection with all life, but it requires stillness to listen. Once we have truly heard, we will never cease to listen, even in the midst of our busyness. Of course, we need to be good stewards of our hearing through gratitude and compassion, the breath of our wisdom.
Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Central Oregon. My name is Marty Rudolph, and I'm delighted to be your worship celebrant today. Today, we gather together to listen, to sing, to worship, to pray, meditate, or maybe nap. Our hearts are alive and secure in knowing that we are welcomed here, whether we be simple or complicated, fun or serious, progressive or conservative, quiet or dramatic. Each of us contributes in their way to the beauty of the whole. So welcome. Welcome all genders, all ages, all incomes, all races, all sexualities. Welcome you theists, you atheists, you agnostics, and you spiritual but not religious. May all of us be grounded in the values of this faith with love at the center of it all. Today, we are delighted to welcome Michael Scott Stevens as our guest speaker. Michael is founder and director of the Natural Mind Dharma Center, a Vajrayana Buddhist community. Michael arrived to his home in Vajrayana Buddhism following a degree in comparative religion and graduate work in theology and clinical psychology. And 20 years studying and teaching yoga. Michael opened the first yoga studio in Bend in the early 1980s, and it was in the early 90s he discovered his spiritual home when studying with Tibetan Buddhist masters in the Nyingma tradition. Michael's spiritual mentors encouraged him to write and teach, which led to the founding of the Natural Mind Dharma Center in 1996. He's a naturalist with a background in botany, wildflowers mostly, and geology. He finds himself most at home in the natural world, and this experience weaves its way into all of his teaching. His approach to the Dharma is thoroughly studied, fearlessly direct, disarmingly humorous, and richly applicable to everyday life. Welcome, Michael.
Sing, come, come, wherever you are, whoever you are. And we're going to do this as a round. So this half, the congregation will start and follow me, and Verlene will lead the second half. Please stand in mind or body. Whoever
Was that 4 times?
That worked for me. Thank you, Verlene. Thank you all. Thank you, Paula.
Good morning. My name is Verlene Arnold, and I have our opening reading words, and Dory Jansen will be lighting our chalice. Different but yet united by Pat Uribe Lichty. We come from many places, along different paths, bringing different truths. We come with different histories and different realities, and yet we come together as one people, with faith that we can use our differences to heal ourselves and each other, to bring wholeness to a fractured world. We come seeking to find community, to find acceptance of who we are. In this place, we may find others who are much like us and others who are much different. May our lit chalice remind us that we are a people taught by different stories, with many voices, but always one people. Working for a world where love creates justice, and justice gives birth to peace.
Please stand again in body or spirit so we can sing Spirit of Life. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea.
Good morning. My name is Amy Brock, and I'm the Director of Religious Exploration for Children and Youth, and it is time for our Time for All Ages. So if you're young or young at heart, I invite you to make your way to the rug for our story this morning. Okay, I'm gonna need some help from all of you to tell the story today. But before I get started, there are 3 things that we're all gonna do together, and you can do it here if you're on the rug, or you can do it in your seat. If you're in your seat, you might just kind of wanna do this with your hands, but be careful of your neighbor. So first, we're gonna make a seed. So think about how you might wanna make a seed, either with your hands or with your whole body, if you're down here with me. Everybody got their seed? Okay. Now, think about how you would make a sprout. Any way you want to make it, with your hands or with your whole body. We got some good sprouts down here, good sprouts out there. Okay, and now think about how you might want to make a tree. Here's some trees. There's some trees. Got a whole forest in here. All right, let's come back down. We're going to start at a seed. Come all the way back down to a seed. And as I tell the story, when you hear me talk about a seed or a sprout or a tree, you can do that with your body or with your hands. Okay, once upon a time, in a quiet corner in the forest, a tiny seed lay buried under the soil. The seed was afraid. It liked the darkness and the comfort of staying hidden. What if it's scary up there, it whispered to the earth. But the sun warmed the soil, and the rain whispered kind words, and slowly the seed began to grow. And as it pushed through the dirt, it saw light for the first time, and soon the seed grew into a small green sprout. It stretched its spiny stem, and it waved its leafy arms, and as it did so, it realized it wasn't alone. Other plants and animals and insects lived nearby, and they were buzzing and being just like the sprout. They all shared the same sun and the earth and the rain, and this sprout continued to grow until it became a very, very tall, strong tree. Birds built their nest in this tree's branches, and children played in the shade, and then the tree realized something else. It realized something important. It wasn't just growing all for itself. It had become a home and a helper and a friend to everyone. And in that moment, the tree remembered that it wasn't scared anymore. It felt happy and peaceful. It had awakened, not just to the light, but to love, and it had become a part of everything. Thank you, sprouts and seeds and trees. You can have a seat. You can put your trees away. I wonder, though, how did it feel to grow like a seed? What did that feel like? Did you feel nervous, kind of like the seed in our story? Yeah. It felt weird. You're kind of like embodying the space, sort of feeling that as you were growing. Well, what are some ways that we can be like these seeds and sprouts and trees and help others around us? You think of anything that you could do to help other people? Provide shade. We could provide shade. We could do that. We have a nice building to help us provide shade. Well, how could we help others? What could we do? We could be tolerant of people. Like how a tree is tolerant of a kid climbing on it. We could be tolerant of each other. Yep, I like that. That's a really good idea. Well, I have one more question for you. What does it mean to wake up in your heart? Kind of like the sprout and the seed kind of woke up and became a tree and realized it was kind of a part of everything. What does that mean if we were to wake up in our heart? Yeah, to see ourselves and to see others and to know that we're all good and that we're all part of this important earth that we live on. It's a really good idea. Thank you for sharing that with us. We are going to explore this more in our different spaces today, the way that we are interdependent and connected to each other. But before we go, we need to say our children's covenant. In this place, I am kind. In this place, I am loving. In this place, I am a friend to the earth and all animals and people. In this place, I am loved.
As you go. We had a straggler. Good morning. I'm Carolyn Tate, your board president this year, and I'd like to extend an what? Thank you. I'd like to extend an extra warm welcome to anyone joining us for the first time and to our stalwart Zoom attendees. Hi, guys. I will highlight a few, I have the announcements. I will highlight a few events this morning. More, of course, are in the Skyline and the ACE and on the website and on our calendar, so please check those. Our endowment committee is offering this awesome mini grants program to support projects that individuals or small groups could cook up that reflect our UU values and strengthen our community impact. Any member may apply, and the grants range from $500 to $1,500, and the deadline for application is coming right up, August 15th. The applications can be found on the website under the endowment section. So apply. Our chalice reader last week was Kareem Bure, and he will join us again this Friday, August 8th, for an interactive conversation about Gaza. The goal of the evening is to help you engage with others around this topic by tapping into your humanity. No RSVP is required. It's Friday, August 8th. I don't have the time. It must be in the ACE. 6 o'clock. And here's my trowel. Over 30 congregants volunteered for the 2 grounds cleanup events in July, and they were fantastic. We got a lot done, but we still have more brush to remove in order to get anywhere close to being safe from wildfire. So please plan to bring your hat, your gloves, and your tools to help out on Saturday, August 16th at 8 a.m. We'll probably have an RSVP in the upcoming ACE and Skyline next week. Those are our announcements for today, but don't forget, your genuine smile will be a blessing to all.
We'll now receive today's offering, which recognizes our financial commitment to support the programs, the ministries, and the beautiful spiritual home of this congregation. We are a living community experiencing life together. In each of our lives, we experience ups and downs, zigs and zags, high points, low points, and everything in between. Now we enter a time of sharing our joys and our sorrows and gratitude in community. Anyone is free to light a candle in one of the side trays alongside of each of the sanctuary while I read the written joys and sorrows and gratitudes that are located each week in the kiosk to be filled out by those of you who would like to share to the larger community. We have a joy and a sorrow and a joy from Judy Hurlbert. A joy, while camping at Hosmer with some you-ers, my expensive kayak paddle disappeared. After many conversations and multiple searches and conversations, it magically appeared. At the camp host, I am happily drove out again to get it. From Barbacella, I am deeply saddened and horrified at the pending elimination of PBS and NPR. The tremendous loss for our creative and culture and society will be forever scarring for generations to come. May we hope and pray that the powers that be come to their senses and preserve the rich, informative, educational, and critical situation. Thank you, Barbara. In good times and in difficult times, in times when we are grateful and in times when we are hurting, it is so good to be with one another in community.
This is a little reflection, actually, from my new book, Wildflower Song. And what I would do is to invite you to place yourself in the words. Many of you, I'm sure, like to hike in nature, and maybe of you have been up on Broken Top, but all of you have experienced the wind caressing your cheek or witnessed the falling of a leaf, in the fall, and it attracted your attention. I stand now on a narrow basalt saddle far above an unnamed moraine lake overshadowed by the craggy slopes of Broken Top. My view toward the Three Sisters volcanoes is totally unobstructed. Vast space swallows me, and I'm totally exposed to the elements, vulnerable to their changeable moods. My mind free falls into the quality of awareness penetrated by a strangely familiar silence, spacious, ungraspable, wild, unpredictable. In nature, this silence is everywhere. It is revealed in a tree as it sways and yields to a breeze. It is in the dance of a falling leaf floating upon unseen currents. Silence is between the droplets of a cascading waterfall. It greets the dawn and witnesses the setting sun. Silence twists in a whirlwind and abides in the space between lightning and thunderclap, which we've had lately. Now the wind strengthens and stings my senses. It gusts strongly, abates, regathers, howls, and whispers. Inside these rhythms is a curious quiescence, something stable and quiet amidst the buffeting currents. This same wind blows through the peaks and valleys of my life, sometimes a gale, sometimes barely a breath. Yet I sense an inner silence that remains unaffected. If we can get past the noise in our minds long enough to listen, we merge with nature's silence. We experience life changes and challenges like wind-whipped ripples on a lake. We are not carried away by thoughts and emotions because there will always be another ripple, while below the surface the lake is undisturbed. When we settle down, we may notice the undisturbed quiet of our mind is the same as the mind of nature. Hi. Good morning. I'm getting a little bit of, I think they call it the God Kleenex, just in case I need it. The patron saint of dripping noses, right? Okay. So, my name is Michael Stevens, and I'm here to share a few words with you about Buddha's awakening. Many people here, I even see some people that already heard me talk this morning at the Dharma Center. There must be gluttons for punishment. I want to acknowledge the Dharma Center and all their support and their love, and I want to acknowledge especially my dear wife, Tarn. We'll be celebrating our 50th anniversary. 50th anniversary, if I can get through this. So, can't believe she's put up with me all those years, but I thank her, and maybe I'd invite you all right now to look around the room and thank your own Sangha here and the support in the community. Thank the love and the connections that you've had. My sister-in-law passed away this last week. Her name is Alice. So invite all of these connections that you have, and think of the love and the connection, and think of it going up into the sky, mingling with the clouds, and then showering down like a blessing on everyone. This is all Buddhism teaches. It teaches us to make sure that we don't get so full of ourselves that we can't visualize our lives and connections as a showering of blessings for everyone beyond ourselves. It invites us to love without condition. And so the stories of Buddha's awakening are really all about that. How do we love without obstacle, without impediment? And basically, it's about getting over ourselves, getting over the limitation that we've placed on ourselves and the way we think and all of our habits of mind. And so the symbolic story of Buddha's awakening is pretty amazing. We don't really know much about Buddha because he wasn't self-referential when he was speaking. He was just talking about waking up. He didn't say, I was born in a little hut somewhere and I grew up and walked 3 miles to school and all of this sort of thing. He didn't do any of that. He just talked about waking up. And so the stories that we have about his life are basically a cobbling together of a rich symbolic soup of the possibilities that he expressed when he walked the planet. And his awakening is a particularly potent one because he studied all sorts of the different traditions at his own time, and he basically just got tired. His fundamental questions about the nature of suffering and the nature of awareness and so on, he wasn't getting his questions answered. And so he just basically sat down. I'm kind of tired of all of this stuff. Okay. Imagine a day that you've had that was really difficult, and you come home after a long day at work or whatever, and you just plop on the couch, right? And you go like, I don't want to think about anything. Anybody had those days? Okay. Well, in that moment, you could wake up. This is basically what Buddha did. I'm tired of all this stuff. I'm just going to sit down and let my mind relax. Of course, that was his first mistake, because any of us that have meditated know that when you first sit down to meditate, when you really try to quiet your mind, all hell breaks loose in the mind, right? It's not that quiet. And so imagine all of the things coming at you. It's like your thoughts on steroids is going to Buddha at that point. And how they tell the story is that Mara is recognizing, and Mara is this archetype, this symbol of our ego mind. You know, Mara is this overlord, and they always depict it as like blood-dripping fangs and wah, you know, this, you know, Mara is going like, I cannot have this guy understand me. I cannot have this person who's about to wake up and understand the delusion of the ego. This is not, this cannot be, this cannot come to pass. And so what he did is Mara sent his armies at Buddha. Now, at this point, his name was Siddhartha, his given name, which, on a side note, means every wish fulfilled. What a name to be given to live up to, right? Don't name your kid Siddhartha. You know, it's like, hey, they'll go, Mom, Dad, I can't live up to this, you know, every wish fulfilled. So Siddhartha's just sitting down and going like, oh, and Mara is coming, and he's just throwing all of his armies at him, and he's throwing all the things that would stimulate hatred, anger, defensiveness at him, all at one time. Think of your worst roiling anger, you know, in your own mind, and then bump that up like a billion times. And Siddhartha basically sat and so Mara said, whoa, this is a tough nut to crack. So he decides he's going to send his daughters to dance seductively in front of him, you know, to incite his passion and his desire and all of this stuff. So imagine all of the things that you know, probably he was dangling the new iPhone in front of him, you know, or something. You know, what do you want? What will incite your desire, right? It has all sorts of bells and whistles and keeps you numb, you know. And so, Siddhartha and so that Mara said, man, I'm going to have to really crank it up and actually question his existence, question his embodiment as a being, right? And so he says to Siddhartha, I said, you know, I'm obviously in charge. All I have to do is read the headlines, all the wars, all the divisiveness, everything. I'm in charge. And I have witnesses. And he points to all the armies and all the things that incite anger, and he points to all the things that incite desire and attachment. He said, I've got all of these witnesses. And he says, you know, who is your witness in this moment that you think you're going to wake up and see through the delusion of it, right? Who's your witness? And Siddhartha and he reaches down, he touches the earth. And she says, important to remember that, she says, I'm his witness. And he wakes up. There's a way that this story is told where a goddess appears at that time. She's just washed her hair and she's wringing it out. And it creates this incredible wave, like a tsunami wave, and washes Mara away. I love that. You can use that in your own meditations. Like when your mind's going crazy, just allow the goddess to come up and wring her hair out on you, right? It'll work miracles. Okay, so he reaches out and touches the earth. And in the Buddhist tradition, the earth represents the ground of our awareness, the literal ground of our awareness, the feminine nature of our emptiness nature, of our wisdom mind, right? When he was born, they say he popped out of the womb and faced the four directions, and he said, in this life I stand between sky and earth, in this life I shall awaken, which probably did not happen. But metaphorically, it harkens to his awakening, because he knew that there was something that is built within the human experience that stands between what we cannot grasp, that inspires us, and where we are, that sometimes we have a trouble negotiating, right? And he's saying that these things are united. Sky and earth are united. within our own mind, within our own heart, within our own awareness. And then when we experience that, they call it the union of wisdom and compassion, we wake up. We wake up to a capacity to love that's beyond our limitations. But I thought I would say a few words about Mara and dig into what Mara really is. Anybody know Mara? Okay, only two of you know Mara. Anybody have an ego? Okay, that's Mara. Only a few more of you have an ego. Wow, I can leave, you know. You may all now leave the monastery. Okay. So, Mara. What is Mara? In the tradition, sometimes it gets a little technical, but Mara has four different qualities. Mara is what are called the aggregates, and I'll go back over these. The aggregates, the afflictive emotions, the fear of death, and distractions. This is what Mara is composed of. Okay. Now, the aggregates are psychophysical personality. It's like who we think we are, and the aggregates are all oftentimes referred to as form, feeling, perception, mental formation, and consciousness. Okay, and so these aggregates kind of go into, they kind of aggregate and define our sense of self. How we address the forms that we see, the conclusions we draw on the basis of that we have feelings about that, and those feelings about the forms that we experience flavor our perception of reality. They actually become filters of how we see reality. So form, feeling, perception. And then when it gets really strong, when all of the conclusions and the habits of mind that we've gained about our life get really strong, they begin to form in our mind. They call it mental formation. They become so habitual that we cannot see anything except through those filters. Does that make sense? Anybody have habits of mind? Anybody ever made a judgment? No. Boy, you folks are so enlightened. I can't imagine. So by the time it gets mental formation, now karma gets set in motion, consequences of action, because we can't not do the habits of mind. They begin to inform all of our experiences. And so we actually have the experience that we cannot separate who we think we are from those habits of mind that are basically arbitrary and they're learned. Anybody have this idea that, like, when they were growing up and you were a teenager or you're 20-something and you knew everything? Okay. But then you grew a little bit more, and then you said, well, I knew that to be true back then, but now I know this to be true because I've grown and changed, right? And then that same thing that you know to be true then, you grow in a few more years, and you go, well, that was true back then, but now this is true and clear. And we're always changing that, and Buddha said, who's doing that? Who is that person who seeks to define itself? And it's kind of like, anybody have those annoying cars that tell you where to go? Okay, and if you miss your turn, they go recalculating, right? Or something like that. Well, this is your ego. It's always recalculating. And if it gets to the point where it needs to grow and change, it still recalculates to reassert the habit of some level, right? And Buddha was saying, that's kind of dreary. That's not really all that helpful in the long run, because ultimately that becomes your consciousness. All of those habits, all of those recalculating, creating the same control issues over and over. Nobody has control issues in here because I know you're all enlightened, right? But the same over and over and over again. And what's interesting is that as annoying as our mind can be, we're constantly reconfiguring it in the same pattern. Sometimes they say that we're using the most annoying pattern in our mind to try to liberate the most annoying pattern in our mind. So how does that work? And so that's just the aggregates. That's our habits of mind. And then the afflictive emotions is, anybody have a negative emotion or emotion that afflicts you, right? Everybody has this experience. So that's part of what Mara is. There's a term in the Tibetan language called Shenpa, and Shenpa means hook. And so it's those emotions that hook us, where we get stuck, right? That's what he's talking about, those emotions. And again, Buddha was saying, who's doing that? Did you read it in a book somewhere that you need to be doing that? You know, he said. And then fear of death. I mean, why do we fear death? Is death happen? Anybody here going to die? Just out of curiosity. I'm getting more hands now. Everybody get, okay. Death is happening, and yet we still live as though we're fearful of death. How do we know that? Because we're fearful of letting go of things. We're fearful of going through transitions where something we've tightly held for a long time, we're being asked to let it go. That's a fear of death, because it's like a little death when we let that go. Okay, so the fear of death, and the last is distractions, basically from being present. You know, in the symbolic language of our tradition, it talks about distractions as being the sons and daughters of the gods. It's basically, it's the thing that we think is so important right now that really isn't, that distracts us from being present to where we are. That's called the demon of distraction. So sometimes they call these the four maras, or the four demons, right? And so the demon of distraction is codified in our culture in a thing called a dumb phone. I guess they call them smartphones, but this little wireless tether we've got going on, you see. It always amazes me how many people are walking out in nature and by a waterfall plugged into their AirPods or whatever it is. You know, I'm sure they're getting some enjoyment, but are they listening to the waterfall, right? So this is the kind of distractedness that goes on in our mind all the time, that we're so busy with that distractedness in our mind that we fail to see even the person in front of us or hear what's going on around us. So anyway, that describes Mara pretty good. Anybody have any experiences with that? Okay. All righty, we do. More people on this side than on that side, for some reason. So anyway, so what I had thought is that, well, because Buddha touched the earth and woke up, the earth must be able to teach us about how to deal with Mara. She teaches us everything that we need to know. Always, always. There's never a time, there's never a moment when she isn't teaching us what we need to know. But we have to learn to listen. And how we learn to listen is we begin to liberate the four maras, like the mara of the aggregates, for instance, the habits of our mind. How do we form the way that we develop as a human being? What are the influences? Of course, we have our parents and educational systems and so on. But in our indigenous self, and we all have an indigenous self that we sometimes don't listen to. Our indigenous self, our ancient encoded indigenous self, always listen to nature. It helps us survive. It knows where water is. It understands the nature of water. In the Buddhist tradition, they talk about the only thing that we need to understand while we're here is earth, water, fire, wind, and space. Because when we're coming to the point where we die, those things unfold. They go the opposite direction. Okay. Instead of becoming embodied as a being, the earth dissolves into water. The water dissolves into fire. The fire dissolves into wind, and the wind dissolves into space. Okay. So if we don't learn from nature before we die, we're going to have a heck of a time, right? Because she's already taught us about the dying process, because we're composed of those elements. And so if we form our identity as a human being in relationship to the earth, then what happens is that the demon of the aggregates begins to form, and we develop as a human by listening to the rhythms of nature. It informs our development, you see. She becomes our primary teacher. Of course, we'll have all sorts of other teachers, but she's our primary teacher. Again, it requires us to listen and connect. And how we deal with the afflictive emotions. How does nature deal with afflictive emotions? Nature has all sorts of afflictive emotions. There was a lot of them going on yesterday. The thunder and the lightning and all of those sorts of things. These emotions that are contrasting, right, that afflict us. Well, if you were to reach up and try to grab one of those clouds in that storm, what would you get? You would get a wet hand. You'd try to avoid the lightning, but you would get a wet hand. If you were to reach up and grab one of these high cirrus clouds right now and try to grab it, what would you get? Just a wet hand. And so nature teaches us how to deal with emotions by helping us understand that our fundamental nature understands sameness and evenness and things that everything is everything else. Water and wave are inseparable, you see. And this is really beautiful, because if you recognize the movement of an afflictive emotion in your mind as simply a big stormy cloud, and you were to reach in and grab it, there's nothing to grab. It's just water vapor. The same thing in something that's beautiful in our emotional life, that knocks our socks off, and our passion and everything. If you were to reach in and grab that, you'd still just get a wet hand, you see. Baba Haridas, who was one of the great teachers that walked among us once, he said the most painful experience he ever had in his life is when he remembered that he recognized that pain and pleasure were the same thing. And then it wasn't painful anymore. Okay, and nature is always teaching us this evenness. Water and wave, all of these things have this, they call it a single flavor. A single flavor. The mind relaxes in the realization of that. And then understanding death is just another step along the way. The law of impermanence underpins our existence. Everything changes. In this midst, right now, cells in our body are dying. We're sloughing off skin cells. The floor is covered with skin cells right now, dead skin cells. Life and death are going on within the beat of our heart, but within the rhythms of nature, you see it everywhere. The transition of the seasons, right? I was talking this morning about, I saw a bee the other day at the end of its life. Have you ever seen a bee? They just kind of like go in a little circle, and they're kind of like can't kind of fly, and they're just about to pass away. And actually, this is a great meditation to watch the bee do a prayer for the bee, and then watch it pass away, and recognize you will be there too. You see, nature is always teaching us this rhythm of impermanence. And she's always teaching us to remain undistracted so that we can listen to what she teaches. You can take these teachings and said, well, Michael, this Buddhist dude, said that clouds are just the same and thunderclouds are no problem any more than a puffy cloud is a problem. So I'm just going to go out in the thunderstorm with an iron rod and hold it up. Okay. Humans will actually do that, believe it or not, metaphorically, or maybe actually. Okay. We can even take teachings like this and be really stupid. But what these teachings are trying to do is to help us understand that our lack of boundary and interconnectedness, which is what nature teaches us, is our fundamental teacher. And the result of that is compassion. The result of that is that we are compelled to be loving beings and compassionate beings. And so, basically, that's all I came to say. Listen to nature. And I just would leave you with this favorite piece of a poem from William Blake. And he said, "To see a world in a grain of sand, and a heaven in a wildflower. Hold infinity in the palm of your hand, and an eternity in an hour."
Thank you, Michael. Let's go off into this beautiful day, strongly singing Blue Boat Home, all 3 verses. Please rise in body or spirit. Though below me I feel no motion, standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean, still my dry land heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. Sun, my sail, and moon, my rudder, as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, making our way by the lights of the heavens in our beautiful blue boat home. I give thanks to the waves upholding me, hail the great winds urging me on, greet the infinite sea before me, sing the sky my sailor's song. I was born upon the fathoms, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home.
Standing as we extinguish the chalice. Tom, would you like to extinguish the chalice for me? And read our congregational covenant together. But first, please join me in thanking Michael Scott Stevens for offering us his insight today. And I'm putting in a little plug. This is his latest book called Wildflower Song. It's only available locally, so if you like wildflowers. Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and service is its law. This is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. do our closing words. Would you like to give us our closing words? There you go.
This is from Thich Nhat Hanh, the great teacher. Walk and touch peace in every moment. Walk and touch happiness in every moment. Each step brings a fresh breeze. Each step makes a flower bloom. Kiss the earth with your feet. Bring the earth your love and happiness. The earth will be safe when we feel safe in ourselves.